Good morning, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving here from us at the SFS channel. Today we've got 3 games as opposed to just our normal Thursday night football contest, so we've got to get these rankings out. Today in this episode, we've got our top 24 wide receivers for Week 12 action. We've also got our top 24 running backs posted in a separate video up right now for you guys to go check out after this video or whenever you guys so choose. But as always, it is Thursday, so we've got prop bets on ThriveFantasy.com. If you guys want to play alongside me and try and win some cash together today, here is one of the props I've made for this afternoon's games. When you go on to Thrive and sign up, become a new player on their platform, use promo code SIZZLE, and they will match you guys between $10 and $100 of whatever you put in between those 2 increments. And when you play your first contest, if you've used promo code SIZZLE, we'll give you guys a month of SFS Gold on us. That'll get me setting your lineups for you every week, giving you guys personalized information, answering your guys' questions in my private DMs on the community Discord server, which can be found, the invite link to that in the description of today's episode. So go check out all that great stuff. Again, ThriveFantasy.com and promo code SIZZLE. That'll get you between a $10 and $100 match of whatever you put in and that free month of SFS Gold. But today, we want to get you guys on your way to enjoying Thanksgiving afternoon and enjoying your holiday traditions with your families. So we're not wasting any more time. Hit the intro. Let's get right into it. All right, here we go. As we mentioned in the intro, we want to get you guys on your way to enjoying the holidays with your families. So we're going to get this episode in. We're going to get you guys on your way, hooked up with your top 24 rankings. And then, obviously, if you want those other rankings, you can go play on Thrive Fantasy and get that free month of SFS Gold, and that'll get you guys unlocked, just the sheet, the list of our rankings. But for today's episode, Cooper Kupp, who else could be the number 1 wide receiver for this week? He's been the most consistently productive player in fantasy this year. He's been the most targeted player on a week-to-week basis. His floor has been 9 in an individual game this season, which is astronomical that your least targeted performance got you 9 footballs thrown your direction. The touchdowns have been there. It's been a very, very enjoyable ride for those of us that drafted Cooper Kupp in our fantasy leagues this season. The ceiling and floor are, again, fantastic. This week against the Packers, they're down their top corner still. Jair Alexander has not been seen in a multitude of weeks now. Cooper Kupp's going to be just fine. At this point, there's really not anyone in the NFL that can guard him anyways. He's too shifty. The Rams have good pass protection, so him and Stafford have every opportunity to hit on slow developing plays. Cooper Kupp will be just fine in Week 12 against the Packers. This is where things get interesting here, where I am starting to divert from consensus a little bit with my top 5 rankings for this week. I've got Deebo Samuel all the way up at the number 2 spot against the Minnesota Vikings. He's been used very, very interestingly the last couple of weeks. He's getting reps in the backfield, like literally playing running back. And last week, he really didn't do all that much as a receiver. He did have, I believe it was a grab for 15 yards, but where he was scoring touchdowns and getting other yards at was in the backfield. And that's something that's very interesting to see now. He's not going to be a full-time running back for the squad, as the team has been down Elijah Mitchell, at least last week, and he broke his finger the week prior. Deebo is just so explosive. He's so able to be uniquely used and taken advantage of in this offense. And if he is split out and used more as a receiving threat this week, we've seen players have huge performances against this Vikings secondary. You see even Devontae Adams, another very, very talented wide receiver, have 2 TD grabs last week and have a nice yardage performance for himself there. And Deebo Samuel is a much more explosive player than Adams is after the catch. So I love the matchup. I love the player. I love the talent, the situation, the usage. It's all great. I think this week it could result in a massive boom for Deebo Samuel. Justin Jefferson on the other side of that matchup is my wide receiver 3 for this week. I bet you guys are a little shocked to not see 17 for the Packers up here, but we'll get into my concerns for that situation in just a second. But Justin Jefferson, he also had himself a day. And last week he was phenomenal, had over 100 yards in the first half against my Packers. He's one of the most talented wideouts in the league. In the next 3-4 years, like the level of production and the level of talent and skill we've seen from Jefferson in his first 2 seasons is already ridiculous. I can't imagine what this guy's going to look at once he peaks and reaches his ceiling as a player and as a talent, but Here against San Francisco this week, Kirk Cousins is having a very under-the-radar season. Only 2 interceptions. I believe it's 18 touchdown passes for him now. It might actually be 19 or 20. And the efficiency has been great, whether it's Dalvin Cook setting up the play-action game, Jefferson just being a monster and getting separation downfield. Him and Kirk have been a very good combo this year, and I don't expect that to change down the stretch here. San Francisco is getting a little healthier on defense. They're starting to play a bit better on that side of things, but they don't have anyone that can match Justin Jefferson one-on-one here. And when you've got a caliber of player like an Adam Thielen on the other side of the field and a running back like Dalvin Cook, it makes it really tough for an opposing defense to really hone in and focus on one player. Boom. Stefon Diggs at number 4 here, taking on the New Orleans Saints. Now, I did bet the under on his yards on Thrive Fantasy's prop bet for this week at 80.5. But we saw Stefon get the job done last week without an astronomical amount of receiving yards because he was finding the end zone, and Josh Allen was targeting him in that area of the field. Now, Stefon could very easily prove me wrong and have a monster game in the reception department. But I think that there's more of a chance here that he gets more valuable targets than it is that he gets, a huge amount of receiving yards. Now, I still feel confident enough to have him at the number 4 spot on the list for this week. But Marshawn Lattimore is a quality NFL cornerback. He is a respectable opponent. The Saints defense, at least on the back end, is really give and take on a week-to-week basis. Some weeks they shut down the opposing offense. In other weeks, the passing game goes all over them, and they let up big points left and right, big plays all over the place. So, Stefon, I'll take him here at the number 4 spot. I still feel more comfortable with him than I feel about Davante Adams, who is my number 5 wide receiver. This is the lowest I've had him in any individual matchup so far this season. Case A, you've got Jalen Ramsey, one of the best cover corners in the National Football League. He is going to be giving a lot of attention to Adams this week. That's going to mean less separation than usual. And the main kicker here, what actually gives me the most headache and most dissatisfaction or the most distress for this up-and-coming matchup for my Packers, is the pass rush. The Packers are down at least 3 starting offensive linemen this week. I mean, technically, David Bakhtiari has been out for this entire season, but we just lost our best remaining O-lineman, Elton Jenkins, to an ACL injury for the season. We're down our starting center, Josh Myers. He's been out for a while now. This could get really ugly really quick if Aaron Rodgers has to sit back in the pocket and if they don't get a run game going to keep the defense honest and not from pass rushing with their ears pinned back. Von Miller and Aaron Donald could potentially be major disruptive forces in this matchup. Now, Davante Adams is still a highly talented wide receiver. Him and Aaron Rodgers still have some of the best chemistry of any quarterback wide receiver duo in the National Football League. So that keeps him up here as a top 5 play. But there are significant risk factors between, again, that pass rush, getting after Aaron Rodgers, getting him off rhythm, off target with his throws, and then you've already got a very difficult matchup in the secondary for Davante to deal with and try and separate from. There's going to have to be some integral scheming going on from Green Bay, from Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers, to get Davante open and to get plays drawn up to head his direction. So this will be an interesting one to follow. We saw in the playoffs last year against Jalen Ramsey, they did that. They made specific plays for Davante Adams to get open and release, motion him away from Ramsey, and get him out in space. We'll see if they're able to do that effectively this week, but there is some bust potential for Davante in lineups here in Week 12. JaMarr Chase, you could make an argument to put JaMarr Chase over Davante Adams as well for this week. He's got big play potential, and the Steelers struggle against defending big plays. He's a field stretcher. He's been scoring touchdowns left and right. I believe he's tied for like 4th or 5th with 8 receiving touchdowns on the season. It's been a great year for good old JaMarr Chase, the number 5 overall pick for the Bengals this season. I love him and Joe Burrow and their chemistry. We talk about it here every week. DK Metcalf at number 7. Washington's defense, the squeaky chair is back, guys. Washington's defense is something that has been all over the map this year. Their pass rush has really struggled at times they'll get going in the first half, slow down, be a non-factor in the second half. Their secondary will play really great one week, and the next week they'll be letting up huge plays over the top. So having a talent like a DK Metcalf, hopefully in Week 3 with Russell back under center now, they're able to get the ball rolling here and get production heading DK's way. This is a matchup he can take advantage of. I feel very comfortable in the fact that he could produce good ceiling numbers, But him and Russ are going to have to be on the same page. They're going to have to be able to maybe hit a deep ball or find the end zone in some fashion to make him finish at this number 7 spot. But the opportunity is there. Mike Evans at number 8 taking on the Colts. Him and TB12 have been doing good things over the past few weeks without Antonio Brown. We'll see if AB is able to go in this contest. I hope so. If that's the case, Mike Evans has, I would say, a lesser ceiling because AB commands such a quality number of targets his direction. But with the red zone involvement that Mike Evans has, he's always a factor to score points. So keep your eye on Mike Evans. I think he'll be a top 10 play this week. Love the talent, love the situation. But again, if AB comes back to the lineup, that is a factor to consider here. Keenan Allen, love the floor every week. The production has been fantastic for the last 4 straight games, giving us floor value and even cracking into some ceiling territory in a couple of those performances as well. Taking on Denver here, I just trust in Justin Herbert. I trust in Keenan Allen's route running, his ability to separate. And again, that dependability factor and that floor value has really been a strong presence the last month of the season. Diontae Johnson's a very similar player at the number 10 spot. Floor value sometimes gets overlooked and is underrated in terms of the utility it has to our lineups, but these are 2 of the most valuable wide receivers right now because of the dependability and the trust I have in them to not wreck my lineup on a week-to-week basis. Taking on Cincinnati, Diontae Johnson seems to be matchup proof, if we're being completely honest. Cincinnati's not a matchup that scares me, but even if it was last week against the Chargers, which have been a better unit against the pass this year, Diontae still put up great numbers, almost cracked the 20-point marker in half PPR scoring. And whether it's him doing work near the line of scrimmage or him stretching the field, he can do it all, run routes and separate at all 3 levels of the defense, short, intermediate, and deep passing game. Diontae is becoming a very, very star-studded player right before our eyes. Not a household name yet, but I think he should certainly be on a lot more players' radars. Chris Godwin, you go back to the Tampa Bay situation. Maybe he moves down a spot or 2 if Antonio Brown can play in this matchup. But Chris Godwin's a heck of a talent. Tom Brady's a heck of a passer. This Bucs offense scores a lot of points. And Chris Godwin's got himself, with that, a fair shot to find the end zone in any contest or to put up a quality number of yards. I'm sorry, guys. I got to adjust my chair. We are really squeaking and creaking here today. Usually I sit on a 4-legged card table chair, if that's what you want to call it, but I'm on a spinny chair on a swivel here today, an office chair. So definitely not going to be using this chair again. Kind of an interesting thing that we've got going on in today's episode. But Chris Godwin, nonetheless, I'm not worried about him, not concerned about him this week. The production with him and Mike Evans has been inflated without Antonio Brown on the football field. And as I've said probably 10 times already in the last 2 minutes, that plays a factor in the situation and in this ranking. But unfortunately, we don't have all the information on that at this time since we are putting this out earlier in the week before Tampa's expected to play. They've only been back, Thursday? So this is just the 3rd day since they've last played a football game. But hopefully the good news is trending in Antonio Brown's direction. Scary Terry McLaurin, I'm giving him some top 12 wide receiver 1 caliber evaluation here for this week. Seattle's an exploitable defense at all levels. Running the football, you can get the job done there. If Antonio Gibson has a successful day on the ground, I would expect Terry to also have a successful day through the air, setting up play-action game, keeping the offense balanced. And he's a playmaker. He has a high ceiling and can explode at any point in time in really any given matchup. We'll see what ends up happening here, but I do think Terry has some very respectable upside. He was finally able to have one of those boom games last week. If he's able to do that here again, I think he can be a big difference maker in a week where some top-end receivers have some difficult matchups. He could actually sneak into higher territory on this list than what I have him graded in the post-week rankings when we actually see where the production lines up and falls with the points that are actually scored here. Michael Pittman at number 13 taking on Tampa Bay. I said this last week, Michael Pittman is not someone whose matchup really intimidates me because overall I expect Carson Wentz to give him a few quality chances here and there. Now, Pittman was quieter against the Bills. However, he didn't really have to do all that much because Jonathan Taylor dominated this football game from the first snap to the last. Now, JT proved to us he has an element of matchup proofness this season. but it would be really lofty expectations to expect Jonathan Taylor to walk out and have 2 or even 3 touchdowns and even half of the yardage he had last week against Tampa's very respectable run defense here in Week 12. So Pittman, I think, has a chance to, again, exploit the weakness of this Buccaneers defense, which is injuries in the back end of the secondary and some younger players back there. If Pittman just gets a few looks, gets a few footballs tossed up to him, he can put up some serviceable lineup value, be a high-end wide receiver 2 play. If he gets in the end zone and scores 6, he could, again, like a Terry McLaurin, have a ceiling that puts him higher on the actual productivity charts. Tyler Lockett at number 14. I've been very impressed by what I've seen from him and Russell Wilson since Russell's return against my Packers a couple weeks back. He's been getting deep passes. He's been getting valuable opportunities to make plays in this offense. Last week against the Cardinals, he made those plays. And like we talked about with DK Metcalf, this is a Washington secondary that'll let up some big plays in the back end. And Tyler Lockett is just the mold of player to do that. Russell Wilson's one of the best deep ball passers in the National Football League, and that skill lines up great with the talent of Tyler Lockett. So I'm liking Lockett's upside again this week. It's an interesting week of fantasy wide receiver matchups. I think the matchups much more favor running backs here in Week 12, but we do have some advantageous wide receiver matchups that I think that some of these wide receiver 2s can actually exceed my expectations for this week. So DJ Moore, another one of those players against Miami. I liked what I saw with him and Cam Newton last week. Cam finally got DJ back in the end zone, back in the productive realm of fantasy football. He had 6 straight weeks up until last game with 10 points or fewer of production in half PPR. He walks out there, 5 receptions, 50 yards, and a touchdown. Things are starting to trend back in the right direction. So in another matchup where I think the Dolphins secondary can be exploited, I think you can make big plays against this team. They do have some ball hawks back there, namely Xavier Howard. I still think DJ has an opportunity for success and productivity here at my number 15 spot. Adam Thielen, the touchdown magician, seems to find his way into the end zone. He's got a nose for the football down there when he wants to cash in for pay dirt. That's really what a lot of his fantasy value and a lot of what his fantasy situation is. But that's a part of fantasy. And I constantly talk about how much I hate touchdown reliance in fantasy situations. But Adam Thielen's a player who has done it at a consistent enough rate where I feel like we have to factor it into his weekly situation. So it's kind of touchdown or bust, but he really tends to score touchdowns more often than not, especially in comparison to other players here. So against the San Francisco, where I think he can have a serviceable game in the yardage department and give us some added value there, again, squeaky chair moment, I think Adam Thielen can be someone who is a really solid wide receiver to play this week. A.J. Brown, this is one where I'm really concerned with A.J. Brown's floor. I think this could potentially be an ugly bust radar performance per se. A lot of times in our must-sit episodes, we'll say, here's 4 must-sit players, but then here's a 5th who is a high-caliber fantasy player that you're probably not going to be able to sit, but I'd be very worried about their overall lineup projection for this week. A.J. Brown would be on the list this week if we were able to make that video in time before we get games underway today. A.J. Brown's got his work cut out for him. No run game. The Titans just waived Adrian Peterson, so that was a bit unexpected, but I guess they're going to roll with Deontay Foreman and some others back there for the rest of the way this season. The run game is really struggling. You've got one of the best defensive coordinators in the league, well, head coach, but manager of the defense, Bill Belichick, and you've got yourself the strength of this team is the secondary. And Bill likes to make teams play without their best offensive weapon. I believe at this point in time, that is A.J. Brown. And that is going to make things very tough on him. Tannehill had 4 picks last week. They weren't running the ball well. They got beat by the Texans. I think the Titans might lose ugly and lose very badly this week. And I think that A.J. Brown getting shut down is going to be a big part of that because their running game has not been on point, because they haven't been able to efficiently and cleanly remain in control of the football. I would be a bit worried about A.J. Brown in your lineups this week if you've got him in your leagues. I might sit him down if I've got a surplus of depth. Michael Gallup against the Las Vegas Raiders here at my number 18 spot. It's the first time Gallup's made a list this year. Now, This really plays into the fact that Amari Cooper will not be out there on the field, and there is a chance that CeeDee Lamb is not out there as well. We'll talk about him in literally a second here. But Michael Gallup could potentially find himself playing the wide receiver 1 role for Dallas on Thanksgiving today. And if that's the case, I think he can make a couple big plays against this Raiders secondary. He is a vertical field stretching threat. He is a prototypical X wide receiver. Now, he is not a player you want as your team's top wideout, but he can go out there and get the job done. Dak will give him a couple chances to go up and make a play. And if that's the case, he's got some decent ceiling value for this week. So Gallup is certainly someone who at least deserves a flex lineup spot for those of you that have him stashed on your bench and have the luxury of him in or on your roster this week. I'd go out there and feel relatively confident in Gallup's ability to get some work in this week. CeeDee Lamb is at my number 19 spot, though, one spot below Gallup. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is a better player, a better fantasy asset, a better basically everything football player. However, there's a chance he doesn't play. So if he's not able to clear a third-party concussion evaluation process prior to Thursday's game, he's not going to be able to be out there and playing for the Cowboys against the Raiders this afternoon. So there's a chance by the time you're seeing this video that has already been the case. Maybe you're watching this on Friday or Saturday before the Sunday games, and this is no longer relevant to you. But CeeDee Lamb, he's clearly the number one. Whether Cooper or Gallup are there or not, he is the top pass catcher for this Cowboys offense. He is a better option if he's out there on Thursday, but because there's a risk that he's not, I put him one spot below Michael Gallup. Mike Williams at the number 20 spot here, so moving into the last 5 names on the list. This is solely an upside play, and those of you that have Mike Williams know exactly what I'm talking about. It's boom or bust, week in and week out. There's no in-between. There's no intermediate amount of fantasy points he scores. Either he has 18 or more fantasy points or 6 or fewer in half PPR scoring, and it's frustrating. It's not easy to go out there and start Mike Williams week after week because he could potentially wreck your week and your lineups for you, but the talent is there, the skill, the size, the quarterback. You've got everything in the situation you want. He's just got to make a big play and score a touchdown, and it's like a coin flip every week essentially. This is a respectable Denver secondary. That's why we've got him lower on the list. And because the floor is not so reliable, another reason he's lower on here. But Mike could potentially be one of those difference makers if he is able to capitalize on that ceiling. Devonta Smith at number 21, taking on the Giants. Devonta Smith's been playing well. And last week he didn't quite reach those ceiling numbers from the 2 weeks prior, but he still had 4 grabs, 60-plus yards receiving. And he's been looking good. Between him and Jalen Hurts' progressions and this Philadelphia Eagles offense taking steps forward, I like what I've seen. And this Giants secondary is exploitable. You're able to make plays against them. And Devonta Smith's a talented young player. He just needs some opportunities. I'd like to see him get more than 4 or 5 catches in a game, but we'll see what ultimately is available and on the table for him come game time. So Smith can stretch the field. We've seen him work in the middle of the field and in the intermediate routes with Jalen Hurts. They've been finding the end zone, 3 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. This is something to keep your eye on here the rest of this season with a great closing schedule for Smith. He could potentially be a weekly top 24 play the rest of the season. Elijah Moore, one of my favorite young rookies this week at my number 22 spot, taking on the Texans. Him and Joe Flacco, baby, they've been finding a consistent rhythm and really putting Moore's talent and skill on display. I'm hoping with Zach Wilson under center this week, they're able to continue to put up points and able to have him find production in this offense. He's easily their most explosive player. He just needs the football. And this is a matchup, the 23rd ranked unit against the fantasy wide receivers. You can get some work done here. And Elijah Moore is a player whose ceiling is fantastic week over week. Again, I love the skill set. He can stretch the field, be a dependable slot asset, whatever the case might be. Elijah Moore just needs the football. This is a matchup where he's going to be able to separate. He's going to be able to get open. He's just got to get those targets from Zach Wilson in his first game back. If he's rusty, that could be something to watch and something to be a little bit concerned about. T. Higgins is my number 23 spot, another matchup we love. We talked JaMarr Chase early in the episode today. You can make big plays against Pittsburgh's secondary, and T. Higgins is a very talented player in his own right. He gets overshadowed more than he should because of JaMarr Chase's presence on this team, but this is, again, a matchup that we love here at SFS. And then 24, Brandon Cooks, getting you guys sent on your way here for Thanksgiving, taking on the Jets. Last week, Brandon Cooks should have had a big day against Tennessee, but he only ran 23 routes. The Texans mopped the Titans off the field. That was a weird game to watch. 5 turnovers forced by the Texans defense. Not something you'd expect ever. And Brandon Cooks is the best offensive player on this team. So if this is a competitive game, Brandon Cooks is going to get the football sent his way. The week that Tyrod Taylor returned, Brandon Cooks had 14 targets. So if the Texans are trailing, which is a very frequent occurrence, or since they're playing the Jets, if they're just in a close game, Cook should see his looks, his opportunities, and that explosiveness and track speed is gonna serve him well and pay dividends to your lineups. Alrighty, everybody, those were my top 24 wide receivers here for this week's action. Again, presented by Thrive Fantasy. Go sign up, create your account, and deposit between $10 to $100 using promo code Sizzle. Again, if you play, that can get you access to a free month of SFS Gold and access to myself on a more personal level in my direct DM, setting your lineups free every week. It'll get you access to our weekly positional rankings on our website, sizzlefantasy.com, and a lot of other great stuff. So go check out Thrive. Try and win some cash with me here for Thanksgiving in this holiday season as we finish up the NFL year. We've got, 7 weeks to go if you count week 12 here through week 18. So let's finish this thing off strong and pick up some big wins this week. Feel free to drop any comments and questions you've got for me down in the comment section below. So with that being said, thank you guys so much. I'll see you later. Peace out.